Excellent. That's looking pretty good, right? In regards to screen size, I feel like everyone can see pretty well.
Yep, looks good.
Awesome. All right, 9:31. I've got the timer going as well. Just so, is it right? Is it right though? 1:59. It's supposed to be 1:59. I think it's working. All right. We'll just go straight away into it. First one on the list is Ina. Is she here? No? We'll skip her.
She's here yet.
Roy, would you like to begin?
Sure. How does the slip box, the heart of this system, work? Strictly speaking, Lumen had two slip boxes, a bibliographical one, which contained the references and brief notes on the content of the literature, and the main one in which he collected and generated his ideas, mainly in response to what he read. The notes were written on index cards and stored in wooden boxes. So we doing a bullet at a time tonight, or a couple, or what are you thinking?
Just how I'm gonna leave it up to the reader.
Whenever he read something, he would write the bibliographic information on one side of a card and make brief notes about the content on the other side. These notes would end up in the bibliographic slip box. In the second step, shortly after, he would look at his brief notes and think about the relevance for his own thinking and writing. He then would turn to the main slip box and write his ideas, comments, and thoughts on new pieces of paper, using only one for each idea and restricting himself to one side of the paper to make it easier to read them later without having to take them out of the box. He kept them usually brief enough to make one idea fit on a single sheet, but would sometimes add another note to extend a thought. So not to break the rhythm of the reading, but I actually have a question about this. One of the things I've struggled with, whether it's in the book or when thinking about Andy Matuszak's note system, is how I decide what a single idea is. And that may seem kind of silly, but I've just had a hard time getting my head around what's too granular and what's combining things that are going to be a danger in the future that I might wish were separated. I don't know if that makes sense as a question for anyone.
Yeah, that makes sense as a question. I've also been wondering that.
Can you say that one more time?
Me or Roy?
Roy, can you?
Yeah, this idea of sort of the atomic idea that, and I think one of the things that I've struggled with in reading this book previously and in reading some of what sort of Andy Matuszak writes about is kind of what constitutes a single idea, and maybe I think that part of that comes from the uncertainty when you're first starting. Like once you've gotten to the end of the process and you've got a permanent note, a single claim is clearly a single claim. But on this end, when you're still figuring out a little bit about, what's important and what's not, I have a little trouble thinking about that concept of breaking down a single idea.
How would you describe a single idea? I mean, I just look at it like even the most simplest ideas are full of complexity, isn't it? I mean, you could say the sky is blue, but behind that is so much more meaning. So when you say a single idea, it can be abstracted so many different ways, couldn't it?
Yeah, I guess I just need to accept that rather than struggle with that. Maybe it's a simple way to put it.
Well, I think it's a quality question, though. It really is, because it makes us look at things in a box, and it makes us go, what's the most granular way of looking at this? And sorry, by the way, my AirPods are acting funny, so I'm just gonna roll without it. So if you get echoes, or I hope the audio is okay. But I just look at like if we're looking for the granularity. I almost feel like, of okay, here's this thing that I'm reading, and I want to get to that single idea. That way, I can put that where it needs to go, and I can organize that. I can structure around that because I've gotten down to that smallest bit. And I think there's a better question as we keep moving forward. Instead of thinking about what's the single idea, how does this idea connect with other ideas? But again, we'll get into all that. I mean, that's really when we start connecting these ideas in the relevant note phase, where we'll start to understand that it's not necessarily a note living by itself anymore. Does that help?
But also it's important to be able to give yourself permission to make a mistake as well. Like throw down the idea, throw down, something that might be wrong, but then iterate back and fix it. It's totally flexible.
Shall we continue?
Yeah, I can go.
Vincent?
Yeah. Is my audio on?
Yes, you're good.
How's my audio? Okay. He usually wrote his notes with an eye towards already existing notes in the slip box. And while the notes on the literature were brief, he wrote them with great care, not much different from his style in the final manuscript, in full sentences and with explicit references to literature from which he drew his material. More often than not, a new note would directly follow up on another note and would become part of a longer chain of notes. He then would add references to notes somewhere else in the slip box, some of them which were located nearby, others in completely different areas and context. Some were directly related and read more like comments, others contained not so obvious connections. Rarely would a note stay in isolation. He did not just copy ideas or quotes from the text he read, but made a transition from one context to another. It was very much like a translation, where you use different words that fit a different context, but strive to keep the original meaning as truthfully as possible. Writing that an author struggles in one chapter to justify his methods can be a much more adequate description of this chapter's content than any quote from the text itself. This would call for an explanation, of course.
I just want to kind of jump in. If we can go back a few paragraphs for the paragraph that starts with, he usually wrote his notes. So we can go up two more. Just basically where he's saying about making references to notes elsewhere in the slip box. I touched on this last week, and a lot of people I talked to in various places. That's I think the key to this is making sure we figure out how we build these, references to start and build them over time. But finding them later, having them surface, I think is the big deal for me out of this.
I'm trying to do my best to get this technical part of it down, but we'll continue. Sorry, guys. I think Samantha.
Oh, looks like Samantha's not here. I'm up next. I'll go ahead and take it from here.
Let's do it.
Okay. The trick is that he did not organize his notes by topic, but in the rather abstract way of giving them fixed numbers. The numbers bore no meaning and were only there to identify each note permanently. If a new note was relevant or directly referred to an already existing note, such as a comment, correction, or addition, he added it directly behind the previous note. The existing note had the number 22, the new note would become number 23. If 23 already existed, he named the new note 22A. By alternating numbers and letters with some slashes and commas in between, he's able to branch out into as many strings of thought as he liked. For example, A note about causality and systems theory carried the number 21/3D7A7, following a note with the number 21/3D7A6.
Can I stop you for 1 second? So what he's talking about, so there's been so much controversy with, this is called Vogelzettel, by the way. Vogelzettel is the nested sequence in which these numbers are organized. Let me see if I can pull up a picture real quick of what a Vogelzettel is. Everyone can see my screen, right? Vogelzettel. Let's see if we can find an image. Again, there's been a lot of controversy because there's some people that are purists and want to mimic. This is a good example here. This is the one that I really based a lot of what I do on it. So the Vogelzettel is this sort of sequence that happens with each note. So you have this note here, and this thread is a conversation here. Hopefully you can see my mouse. This is one threaded conversation, and then this is another threaded conversation. And it continues to span out, if that makes sense. So the confusion happens when you apply this into the digital realm, because the digital realm, because we can actually see behind the cards, we're no longer limited to something like this photograph here, where it's you have a note card and you have this note card in front of you. So what the nested sequence does is now we get to see what those threads are, if that makes sense. And so when he's talking about sort of number 22, number 23, what he's talking about, Luhmann had to do that because he was limited to what a physical slip box, what you could actually do with it, and you had to organize it some way. And so when people were transitioning from the analog slip box into the digital realm, Zettelkasten and DE, these guys were the ones that were really behind it. They started implementing UIDs, or universal identification. And those would be sort of a date timestamp. And I think I had the picture here, something like this. This would be the Vogelzettel, and then they would institute something called the UID. And this works perfectly when you're using a sort of tree hierarchy, if that makes sense. It works perfectly when you're doing folders and folders and folders. But what happens is when you do this in Rome, you can actually skip this part. And that's the fascinating thing about having the granularity at the block level instead of the page level or the folder level. So again, I just wanted to touch upon when he's talking about these numbers here, that's what he means. He's talking about the Vogelzettel, and that's what Luhmann sort of had to develop because of the limitations of the physical slip box.
Okay, I'll continue on the next one. Whenever he added a note, he checked his slip box for other relevant notes to make possible connections between them. Adding a note directly behind another note is only one way of doing this. Another way is by adding a link on this and or the other note, which could be anywhere in the system. This very much resembles, of course, the way we use hyperlinks on the internet. But as I will explain later, they're quite different, and it would be rather misleading to think of the slipbox as a personal Wikipedia or a database on paper. The similarities are obviously there, but the subtle differences are what makes this system unique.
And I'll explain what he's talking about. What he's talking about now is index notes. So indexes are almost like hashtags, like productivity or systems theory or algorithm of thought. It was a way to sort of link this to other notes. But again, that's efficient and effective when you have a physical slip box and where the granularity is happening in the sort of folder level. But in Rome, you can go a level deeper to the block instead of the folder. Again, I just wanted to interject little points as we're moving forward here.
Okay. Net, you want to go?
Yes, sir. By adding these links between notes, Luhmann was able to add the same note to different contexts. While other systems start with a preconceived order of topics, Luhmann developed topics bottom up, then added another note to his slipbox, on which he would sort a topic by sorting the links of the relevant other notes. The last element in his file system was an index, from which he would refer to one or two notes that would serve as a kind of entry point into a line of thought or topic. Notes with a sorted collection of links are, of course, good entry points. That's it. Actually, it is.
Can I ask a question real quick? Sorry, Nancy. I just want to ask a question to the whole group. Why do you think it's important to have entry points or index notes in a Zettelkasten? What do you think the significance of that is? Why do you think that's important to have entry points or good entry points?
Maybe, sir, because this is where the conversation happens or the connection of your of collected permanent notes. Sir.
And also maybe, maybe to also realize that once we have a critical mass of notes, we're not going to remember where everything is. And because there is no, it's not a top-down structure. We don't have like, the mistake that I see a lot of people do is they'll start with productivity and they'll start adding all the different things like topics. And what the Zettelkasten is saying, no, it's bottom up, it's emergent. So we actually don't start with topic headings as much as it is we're going to connect these ideas. And so having good entry points is important because because then we won't lose the thoughts that we've had, the notes that we made, if that makes sense. And so I just remember, Sonke emphasized entry points all the time. That he made a really big emphasis on having good entry points. And basically what an entry point is a way to enter your Zettelkasten and know where the hell you are. And know where to go next and understand where you came from. And so that's the sort of entry point. So when you want to have a conversation with your Zettelkasten or you want to add a new note, you can sort of seek that out by having these good entry points. He calls it an index. And I'll let you keep going.
Can I continue? That's it actually. It is even simpler than this, as we now have software that makes it much easier. We don't need to manually add numbers on notes or cut out paper as Luman had to. Now that you know how the slip box works, you only need to understand how to work with it. And the best way to understand this is to understand a little bit about the way we think, learn, and develop ideas. And if I were forced to boil it down to a single bullet point, it would be this. We need a reliable and simple external structure to think in that compensates for the limitations of our brains. But first, let me guide you through the process of writing a paper with the slip box.
That was the focus of the first week, by the way. It's just a simple, lightweight structure. We just want to think about that. I'm just going to scroll to the top. Okay, keep going. Ned, do you want to keep going or do you want to pass it? Christine?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Imagine you do not start with a clean sheet. Imagine instead some friendly genie or well-paid personal assistant, whatever is more likely for you to have available, prepared a rough draft of your paper for you. It's already fully developed argument, including all references, quotes, and some really smart ideas. The only thing left to do is revise this rough draft and send it off. Make no mistake, there is still work to do, and it is more than just finding some typos. Editing is work that needs focus. You have to rephrase some sentences, delete one or two redundancies, and maybe even add a couple of sentences or passages to fill some holes left in the argument. But at the same time, it is a well-defined task, nothing that couldn't be done within a few days, and certainly nothing that you would have trouble motivating yourself to do. Everybody is motivated when the finish line is within reach. No problem so far. Imagine now that you are not the one who has to edit the rough draft and turn it into the final paper, but the one who has to prepare it. What would be helpful to achieve that quickly? It would certainly make things a lot easier if you already had everything you need in front of you. The ideas, the arguments, the quotes, long developed passages, complete with bibliography and references. And not just readily available, but already in order, sorted by chapters that have descriptive headlines. Now that's a clear assignment. No worries about perfect sentences. Someone else will take care of that. No worries about finding things and coming up with ideas. Somebody else already took care of that. You just focus on turning a string of ideas into a continuous text. Again, this is still serious work, and you have to put some effort into it if you want to make it great. You might spot a missing step in the argument and have to fill it, or you might want to rearrange some notes and leave something out that you regard as less relevant. But again, this is not an overwhelming task, and luckily, it doesn't need to be perfect. No problem so far.
Equally manageable is the task of bringing already existing notes into order, especially if half of them are already in order. Already are in order. Searching through a file system with strings of discussions, plenty of material and ideas is, believe it or not, fun. It does not require the kind of focused attention you would need to formulate a sentence or to understand a difficult text. Your attention is rather at ease, and it even helps to have a playful mindset. Only with a less narrow focus will you be able to see connections and patterns. You see clearly where long strings of discussions have already been built up. This is a good starting point. If you do look for specific notes, you have an idea to turn to. No problem at all so far.
And can
At this
I
point,
just,
whoop,
can I just say one thing? I think that is the truest statement ever. Searching through a file system with strings of discussions, plenty of material and ideas is, believe it or not, fun. And if you watch back, I did a Threadapalooza live stream where I literally put together 100 tweet storm live without even I threw away the outline that I had before. I did it live. It was, every time I go in there and I pull things out, it's so much fun because all the work's already been done. And I just want to emphasize that, believe it or not, output is fun. And I really want to emphasize that. And that's the goal. That's the goal after these 6 weeks, is to go, wow, I can start outputting and it's fun. Please.
at this point, it should become clear that you don't need to wait for a genie to appear, as each step is clearly not only within your abilities, but also straightforward and well-defined. Assemble notes and bring them into order. Turn these notes into a draft, review it, and you are done. Now that's all well and good, you might say, but what about writing these notes? Obviously, it's easy to write a paper if the main part of the writing is already done and only needs to be turned into a linear text. But isn't that a little bit like saying, if you are short of money, just take what you need out of your piggy bank? Everyone can make things look easy by leaving out the main part. So where is the genie for that?
Can I ask a question? Yeah. So I'm wondering if I could think of this, Bo, as assembling like an outline of topic sentences or key sentences. Like I'm almost thinking each of these ideas I kind of string together to build my argument. I would build an outline of my key sentences, my topic sentences. And you're right, it is kind of fun to do that because you can move things around. That's really the toughest part, because from there, once you have your key sentences, one key sentence per paragraph, if that's how you write, then you just need to write your paragraphs, which, it's not trivial, but having that outline of your argument top to bottom makes the whole thing way more enjoyable. Is that kind of?
It is, but that's the traditional Zettelkasten. That's the power of the traditional Zettelkasten. What I'm saying is that when you do this in Rome and how you nest things with the granularity at the block level, not only do you get to organize the outline like you're talking about, you also have the ability to by opening up that wall of text, you can actually see where that idea came from. And that's the fascinating, like I'm getting chills right now, but that's the fascinating part about it, is that we're not, if we want to limit ourselves to the 3x5 note card, we can. That's when we collapse the block, the wall of text, right? The fleeting notes, the literature notes, permanent notes. But if we want to dig in, it's literally clicking on that caret, and it'll open it all up, and it'll show all of the abstractions that it took to get to that point. And then not only do you get to outline your permanent notes, you can outline your fleeting notes, your literature notes, a picture over here, a thought over here, some random abstraction over here. And then as you pull that into your outline, that's the thing that really, it blows my mind, because that's what, when you apply this in Rome, that's what happens, if that makes sense. So it's taking, like, that's what the tradition, the reason why people are so excited about a Zettelkasten is, in a traditional Zettelkasten, you are able to just outline by bringing over your permanent notes. What I'm saying is, because the granularity happens at the block in Rome, you can bring over an abstraction from your literature note. You can bring in an abstraction from your fleeting note into it as well.
Hey, Bo. This whole idea just inspired me to think like that we already think like reverse engineer stuff. So like a Zettelkasten is more or less backward thinking, I guess. You have someone who's given a thought, and then you kind of like, you analyze it kind of from the back end. So are you summarizing, looking what just happened? So I was thinking about how we teach, like in school, everything's so linear. So it's like, here's your question, and then here's first you got to write out your outline, and then you got to, so like, it's so linear thinking, but nobody really thinks like that. And we're very auditory. So in the old days, we never sent people to school to explain things. Like, we didn't make them go to school and write it out in essays. People just explained them while they talked. And so that's what I was released by that today, because I was like, okay, I had to explain to somebody how to, I had to explain to someone how to do something today. So I did it verbally. And then as I went along, I was like, oh, that's right, I need to add this after step one. I missed a step. But then, so what I find, like, I wrote it all out today, but then I could easily just move the blocks over to where they go so that they were in the right order. And then I wrote the introduction after I was done the whole thing.
Yeah. And I want to touch upon what you said, though, because that's what, and I think the problem that I've butted up against more than anything is that, because we are tested in that top-down structure, in a semester, everything is in a syllabus in a semester, we've been ingrained and entranced to think that way, and think that that's how we're supposed to build our knowledge as well, instead of bottom up. Everything is top down. We're tested on top down. We have semesters top down. We have a syllabus top down. So it's just, it's realizing that and going, okay, I see that. I need to take a good look at that and go, okay, maybe there's another way. And that's what Zettelkasten really sort of provides for. But anyways, Mike, does that answer your question, by the way? Awesome. We'll keep going.
Granted, writing these notes is the main work. It will take enormous amounts of effort, time, patience, and willpower, and you will probably break under the weight of this task. Just kidding. It is the easiest part of all. Writing these notes is also not the main work. Thinking is. Reading is. Understanding and coming up with ideas is. And this is how it is supposed to be. The notes are just the tangible outcome of it. All you have to do is have a pen in your hand while you are doing what you are doing anyway, or a keyboard under your fingers. Writing notes accompanies the main work, and done right, it helps with it. Writing is, without dispute, the best facilitator for thinking, reading, learning, understanding, and generating ideas we have. Notes build up while you think, read, understand, and generate ideas, because you have to have a pen in your hand if you want to think, read, understand, and generate ideas properly anyway. If you want to read something for the long run, you have to write it down. If you want to really understand something, you have to translate it into your own words. Thinking takes place as much on paper as in your own head. Notes on paper or on a computer screen do not make contemporary physics or other kinds of intellectual endeavor easier. They make it possible. Neuroscientist Neil Levy concludes in the introduction to the Oxford Handbook of Neuroethics, summarizing decades of research. Neuroscientists, psychologists, and other experts on thinking have very different ideas about how our brains work. But as Levy writes, no matter how internal processes are implemented, you need to understand the extent to which the mind is reliant upon external scaffolding. If there's one thing the experts agree on, then it is this: you have to externalize your ideas, you have to write. Richard Feynman stresses it as much as Benjamin Franklin. If we write, it is more likely that we understand what we read, remember what we learn, and that our thoughts make sense. And if we have to write anyway, why not use our writing to build up the resources for our future publications? I have a comment on the first part of that very long paragraph. It strikes me as I was reading it that this part at the top, Bo, I think is what you were getting at in yesterday's work. Is that right? Although I haven't concluded the assignment yet.
I was yes. It's to be mad to not be able to do this. That's what I wanted to emphasize. I wanted you to get upset, like, yeah, that was spot on.
I can continue. Thinking, reading, learning, understanding, and generating ideas is the main work of everyone who studies, does research, or writes. If you write to improve all of these activities, you have a strong tailwind going for you. If you take notes in a smart way, it will propel you forward.
Okay, I'll go ahead. I'm audible, right? Chapter 2.1, Writing a paper step by step. Make fleeting notes. Always have something at hand to write with to capture idea that pops in your mind. Don't worry too much about how you write it down and what you write it on. These are the fleeting notes, mere reminders of what is in your head. They should not cause any distraction. Put them in one place, which you define as your inbox, and process them later. I usually have a simple notebook with me, but I am happy with napkins or receipts if nothing else is at hand. Sometimes I have a voice record on my phone. If your thoughts are already sorted and you have the time, you can skip this step and write your idea directly down as a proper permanent note for your slip box.
Can I say something? I just want to, when I texted Connor that I was going to get coaching sessions with Sonke, he said something very interesting. He goes, "That's cool, but also remember, teach your teachers." And I thought about that, and I think I understood what he meant was, Sonke distilled what Luhmann was writing about. He distilled the Zettelkasten process and sort of brought it to mainstream in 2017. And we also have to remember that when Lumen was developing this, he was developing this in a different time. They didn't have Twitter, they didn't have internet, high-speed internet, they didn't have YouTube, you know, they didn't have all this technology. And so when I think about something like this is one of the biggest reasons why I was like, no, but there's something deeper here. Because when I think about I'm happy with napkins or receipts or nothing else at hand, I think about the influx of information that we're taking in. And I go, I can only imagine what type of desk Nicholas Lumen would have with ideas on napkins, stacked on napkins, on napkins, on napkins on his desk. And so, especially with the amount of information that we're consuming every day, I think there has to be another solution. And this is where really taking the time to do fleeting notes by writing and thinking and writing is where it's a very interesting twist, because now instead of trying to speed this process up by just writing a little word, we're actually having to slow it down. It's almost like, you know, in the turn of the century, it was like we were struggling to have enough food to eat. Now we're sort of having trouble losing weight to stay healthy. So it's that sort of idea that I'm really emphasizing here, is that back then maybe that was important to speed things up, but in 2021, maybe with the amount of information that's going on, maybe it's more important to slow things down. But we'll get into all that. I just wanted to sort of plant that seed that this is one idea. And again, we have to remember the context in which Sonke is pulling this information from.
Sure. I'll go ahead with a couple of more paras. Make literature notes. Whenever you read something, make notes about the content. Write down what you don't want to forget or think you might use in your own thinking or writing. Keep it very short, be extremely selective, and use your own words. Be extra selective with quotes. Don't copy them to skip the step of really understanding what they mean. Keep these notes together with the bibliographic details in one place, your reference system. Make permanent notes. Now turn to your slip box. Go through the notes you made in step 1 or 2, ideally once a day and before you forget what you meant, and think about how they relate to what is relevant for your own research, thinking, or interests. This can soon be done by looking into the slip box. It only contains what interests you anyway. The idea is not to collect, but to develop ideas, arguments, and discussions. Does the new information contradict, correct, support, or add to what you already have in the slip box or on your mind? Can you combine ideas to generate something new? What questions are triggered by them? Shall I go ahead? Or
Sir,
You want me to go or?
okay, you can.
in the second from book club 3 dun sa coil group po, there's this thing as settle questions and fleeting questions. Where do you know to to arrange that on your system? How do we combine that po?
Who's asking right now? Is Neti's asking? Who's asking the question?
Yeah, that's Antoinette.
I think it was Annette, right? Antoinette. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's interesting that why would Rome Book Club 3 Coils group have something called Zettel questions? And I think it's a fascinating. I don't know. I don't know, because in the text right here it just says, you know, the questions are happening inside the Zettelkasten. And if you're doing the Zettelkasten right, the questions are happening in the Zettelkasten and the answers are happening in the Zettelkasten. Because as you read more and as you process more, you're able to sort of add the next note underneath, add the next note underneath, add the next note underneath. And so when they say something like, I have a Zettel question, I don't want to say, I think they're exploring, and I welcome the exploration. I just don't know where it's going to lead. But I've thought about that too.
Joel Chan talks about that a lot in his work.
And that's where I think there's a lot of confusion, is because, again, no one's ill-intentioned, but it's you know, it's a very, like, if you watch I think it was day 7's video, where, you know, you have these theoretical physicists talking about this formula for G, and it's like, when you start getting down to like the super complex bottom levels of it, it's really hard to understand. So it's much easier just to go, well, I've got the first 3 levels here. I think that's good enough. I'm just going to add what I need to add with what I already know and just make something happen. And I think that's where a lot of the confusion really lives, because there's plenty of people in Berlin or Hamburg or whatever German city where they have fully functioning Zettelkastens and they work. And I think it works because they didn't have to, you know, put a Frankenstein together. You know, they understood what Lumen was talking about. They understood the concepts. It's a simple, lightweight system. If you do it right, it's simple. It's lightweight. You don't think about it. You just do it. You just know where everything lives. But there's complexity involved that you have to sort of go down into the different levels and understand. But again, that's I just haven't seen. Yes, I don't want to get into the politics of it, but I think it's interesting, and I'd love to see where it goes.
It's also a concept in the course of Sir Lucas po in Cortex Pertura po in Cyto, right? Technical writing, academic writing po is mostly the topic of that, and I have a habit.
Confusing, isn't it? It's confusing, isn't it?
It's confusing. So.
Yeah, I know, and that's the problem. We're confusing everyone that wants to learn how to do a Zettelkasten with all these other things that they're putting into the soup.
Yes, I thought it's gonna make me easier to take notes, but it's just confusing. Yeah.
Yeah.
My problem is in terms of academics po, and having a hard time for that part.
Yeah. Shall we continue? I think it was Colby.
In truth, it is highly unlikely that every text you read will contain exactly the information you look for and nothing else. Otherwise, you might have already known that it was there and wouldn't have had reason to read it in the first place. Also, the only reason to find out if something is worth reading is by reading it, even just bits of it. It makes sense to use the same time spent in the best possible way. We constantly encounter interesting ideas along the way, and only a fraction of them are useful, as the particular paper we started reading it for. Why let them go to waste? Make a note and add it to your slipbox. It improves it. Every idea adds to what can become a critical mass that turns a mere collection of ideas into an idea generator. Write exactly 1 note for each idea and write it as if you're writing for someone else. Use full sentences, disclose your sources, make references, and try to be as precise, clear, and brief as possible. Throw away the fleeting notes from step 1 and put the literature notes from step 2 into your reference system. You can forget about them now. All that matters is going into the slipbox. I guess I can continue. Now add your new permanent notes to the slipbox by filling each one behind 1 or more related notes. With a program, you can put 1 note behind multiple notes. If you use pen and paper like Lumen, you have to decide whether if it fits best, and add manual links to the other notes. Look at which notes in the new one directly relates, or if it does not relate directly to any other note, just file it behind the last one by adding links to related notes, making sure you'll be able to find this note later by either linking to it from the index or by making a link to it on a note that you can use as an entry point to discussion or topic in itself to the index.
Can I say one thing? You know how it talks about right here, so if it does not relate directly to any other note yet, just file it behind the last one. So that's basically saying when you have a new note, it's basically, let me see if I can find one picture real quick. Okay, it's lagging. Let's do. I want to show a picture of what that means. I think Zettelkasten and branching might be better. Yeah, there we go. Just so there's a visualization. So think of it something like this but instead of having it sort of horizontal, it would actually be vertical. So if you, okay, I don't know what's doing now. I think it's probably easier just to show you my Zettelkasten. Let's do Rome. I want to emphasize this point because this is important, because you're gonna go, well, where does this fit now, or how does that relate to in the digital realm? And okay, this is taking too long. Yeah. Just give me a minute, 30 seconds, everyone. A lot of these terms, like what I realized is when we were doing the RDC2, a lot of these terms and ideas seem very abstract until you see it. And then you're like, oh, that's what it means. Oh, it's simple. That's what he means by one note behind the next note, or this or that idea. And I think if you can see the visualization, you can understand what he's talking about when he says, look to which note the new one directly relates to, or if it does not relate directly to any other note, just file it behind the next one. And is it gonna?
But he also does talk about index, so that's something I'm kind of wondering. Do you maintain an index, or you just kind of let the notes speak?
The index happens because the granularity happens at the block. You don't need to have it. I don't want to get too far ahead.
Okay.
No,
I'll trust.
It's such a good one. Just when I talk about the headlights on a dark country road, you know that we're about to talk about index. But that's going to be like week 5. This isn't loading. This isn't loading. But obviously, all I'm saying is it's different when he says we put the next note directly behind the next note. It's different now that you can actually see the nested sequence, if that makes sense, because you can see the indentions, which is every permanent note lives on a different child block or a sibling block or as a parent block. Because you can actually see it in the digital realm, you're not actually placing it behind the next note anymore. You can actually just place a new top level parent block with children underneath as the conversation goes. I'll pull up a picture as we're going through here, but please, Colby.
Just hold on here. So,
I think it was this one.
Okay, so number 5, develop your topics, questions, and research projects bottom up from within the system. See what is there, what is missing, and what questions arise. Read more to challenge and strengthen your arguments, and change and develop your arguments according to the new information you're learning about. Take more notes, develop ideas further, see what things you will take. Just follow your interests and always take the path that promises the most insight. Build upon what you have. Even if you don't have anything in your slip box yet, you never start from scratch. You already have ideas your mind to be tested on, opinions to be challenged, and questions answered. Do not brainstorm for a topic. Look into the slip box instead to see where chains of notes have developed and ideas are built to clusters. Don't cling to an idea if another, more promising one gains momentum. The more you become interested in something, the more you will need and think about it. The more notes you'll have collected, the more likely it is you will generate questions from it. It might be exactly what you're interested in from the beginning, but it's more likely that your interests will have changed. That is what insight does.
Okay, let me just
I have a-
let me see if
I
I
have
can
a quick-
finish.
Okay, I just had this epiphany. So a friend of mine gave me some financial statements to show a project that she was trying to get she was doing some fundraising for, and she did it typical spreadsheet style. So like, this is how much the project materials cost times how many locations times so much per, like it was like typical style where you like do like a spreadsheet where you put all the little steps and then at the end you have the equal sign, kind of like 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 = 2. And nobody was reading this budget paper that she spent like literally, I don't know, she probably spent 5 days doing it. So I said to her, why didn't you take the end paragraph that had the summary, the total, and put it right next to the category type? So if it's like total project, total wages, then this is the total amount. And if they want to know how you came to that number, it's at the end. No one really wants to look at how you got there unless they're super keeners. So basically, isn't that kind of what we're doing, the same thing?
Yeah. Essentially.
But so like in some ways, when we do a math equation, it's almost backwards. Like we're training our brains to go 1 + 2 + 3 + 4 = this, which is really what we should be doing is like when we finish it, almost put 23 = 1 + 2 + 4 + whatever, because we really just want to know, especially in our short tension span, we just want to know the answer. We don't really want to know how you got there.
So just to build off that, Samantha, but when I've looked at your Zettelkasten, tell me if this is a terrible way to think about it. When I tried to put it all together in my brain watching, I think it was you and Hasefield did a tour.
Yes.
I started thinking about the way you do blocks. This sentence, letting go of summarization to embrace our thinking, that's a claim or a idea, right?
Yes.
But everything below that is kind of the that block, whether you had literature notes or whether you had fleeting notes or whatever else, is kind of the origin story of that idea in a way.
Yes, but the thing is that idea, I didn't go out seeking that the first topic was going to be thinking.
Right.
If that makes sense. It wasn't, I didn't say like my first topic is going to be about thinking or my next topic is going to be about progress. It's because there was no other place that it would fit, or this is the conversation that I wanted to continue, that when I go into the next thing, then I have more below it, if that makes sense. And this is basically what I mean by you find where it lives, right? And if it doesn't live anywhere else, you just go here and you add a new one, and we'll go productivity or something.
Right, but I was actually thinking more about the page itself. So if you take seeking a deeper metaphor, that in your construct has a origin story to it in that nested set of blocks.
It shows when I click, because it's a permanent note, because it's a page with the double brackets. If I click on it, not only does it show me the date that I created it, it has all the fleeting literature notes that are assigned with it, and it also shows me the location of where it's located in the Zettelkasten.
Right, that's what I'm loosely calling the origin story of that idea.
Yeah,
all
exactly. Which is basically an entry point. Because now you know where you are. You know how to enter the Zettelkasten. And here's the thing, if I go back, right? And by the way, this isn't even a Zettelkasten, this is a project Zettel, right? So it's completely firewalled from my main Zettelkasten, right? But I can go, because I have the index now located at the granularity of the block level, I can go into this anywhere I want, if that makes sense. But again, I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but just understand that everything that Sonke is talking about, that in entry notes and index notes, I've applied that, and we're all gonna sort of see that there is no other way to think about this in the digital realm. There is no other way to apply this in the digital realm except for that. And that's really what these whole 42 days is just to go, there really isn't any other way to do this. It's simple. Shall we?
Sorry, am I back?
Yina? Yeah. We're here, aren't we? 6, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I lost my train of thought too. Okay. So after a while, you will have developed ideas far enough to decide on a topic to write about. Your topic is now based on what you have, not based on an unfounded idea about what the literature you are about to read might provide. Look through the connections and collect all the relevant notes on this topic. Most of the relevant notes will already be in partial order. Copy them onto your desktop and bring them in order. Look for what is missing and what is redundant. Don't wait until you have everything together. Rather, try ideas out and give yourself enough time to go back to reading and note-taking to improve your ideas, arguments, and their structure. 7, turn your notes into a rough draft. Don't simply copy your notes into a manuscript. Translate them into something coherent and embed them into the context of your argument while you build your argument out of the notes at the same time. Detect holes in your argument, fill them, or change your argument. 8, edit. Oh, sorry. Okay to go ahead? Okay. 8, edit and proofread your manuscript. Give yourself a pat on the back and turn to the next manuscript. These are the steps presented as if you will only write only one paper or article at a time. In reality, you never work on just one idea, but many ideas in different stages at the same time. And that is where the system plays out its real strengths. We cannot help but think about more than one question at a time, and the chances are that you will think and write in the future as well. It might not be for academia or a publication, but certainly for your own intellectual growth. Gather what you encounter along your way and don't let any good idea go to waste. You might read a certain book and hope it could be useful for one of the papers you write. Maybe you are wrong, but it still might contain some interesting thoughts worth keeping and useful for something else you haven't thought about yet. A typical workday will contain many, if not all, of these steps. You read and take notes. You build connections within the slip box, which in itself will spark new ideas. You write them down and add them to the discussion. You write on your paper, notice a hole in the argument, and have another look in the file system for the missing link. You follow up on a footnote, go back to research, and might add a fitting quote to one of your papers in the making. Also, I don't know how long to continue, so just let me know if I need to stop. How focused you want to read depends on your priorities. You don't have to read anything you don't consider an absolute necessity for finishing your most urgent paper, but you will still encounter a lot of other ideas and information along the way. Spending the little extra time to add them to your system will make all the difference because the accidental encounters make up the majority of what we learn. Imagine if we went through life learning only what we plan to learn or being explicitly taught. I doubt we would have even learned to speak. Each added bit of information, filtered only by our interests, is a contribution to our future understanding, thinking, and writing. And the best ideas are usually the ones we haven't anticipated anyway. I really like that.
I love that. Well, why did you like that?
I think it helps to provide comfort in knowing that our traditional education system is not the best way to build intellectual property or growth, whatever that term is. And that this way of systemizing your notes is more organic when it comes to building on foundations of what you're learning. And also it really applies to human nature in the sense that we pursue things we're passionate about or pursue things we're interested in. Where I think in traditional education systems, it's really about this is the mandate of what you need to learn. And there's really no other way around it. So I feel like this kind of almost sets you free in what you are able to explore, and kind of gives you permission to focus on what you're interested in, only that.
That's a bingo.
And this kind of touches on the thing I mentioned last week, that, you know, for fiction writers, a lot of times they don't know which way the story's going, right? They let the characters tell them where the story's going to end up. And then same thing here, you know, you kind of build your ideas, you don't know where they're going to go. And then eventually, you know, that's, as they said in that last sentence, the best idea is the ones we hadn't anticipated. So that's the whole point of this.
Yeah, it really kind of makes me think of growth mindset in a way. In that, you know, I think that traditional education system, it really kind of operates from a fear mindset, where it's like you don't know enough, or you need to learn up to a certain foundation to be even considered that you're eligible to play in this rank, whatever field you're in. But I feel like with thinking about learning and intellectual knowledge in this way, it kind of gives you the freedom, or like the permission to roam around and realize that, you know, the exploration part, or like the journey part, is what is going to be the most valuable in the end.
I think she said Rome, guys.
Pun not intended, but I'll take it.
Do you want to finish this out and we'll go to the next chapter?
Sure. Most people follow different lines of thought at the same time. They might focus for a while on one idea, but then leave it alone for another while until they see how to proceed further. It is helpful then to be able to pick up on another idea now and go back to the earlier thought later. It is much more realistic to keep this flexibility, and you don't have to worry about starting all over.
And in the digital realm, it's like you don't lose anything, even if you come back to it later. If you do the fleeting literature notes right, then you have all the context you need. You have all your abstractions and thoughts there. Roy?
Everything you need to have. There's this story where NASA tried to figure out how to make a ballpoint pen that works in space. If you've ever tried to use a ballpoint pen over your head, you've probably realized it's gravity that keeps the ink flowing. After a series of prototypes, several test runs, and tons of money invested, NASA developed a fully functional gravity independent pen, which pushes the ink into the paper, or onto the paper, by means of compressed nitrogen. According to this story, the Russians faced the same problem, so they used pencils. The slip box follows the Russian model. Focus on the essentials, don't complicate things unnecessarily. Academic writing in itself is not a complicated process that requires a variety of complicated tools, but is in constant danger of being clogged with unnecessary distractions. Unfortunately, most students collect and embrace over time a variety of learning and note-taking techniques, each promising to make something easier, but combined have the opposite effect. The whole workflow becomes complicated. There's a technique of underlining important sentences, sometimes of different colors or shapes, commenting in the margins of a text, writing excerpts, employing reading methods with acronyms like SQ3R or SQ4R, writing a journal, brainstorming a topic, or following multi-step question sheets. And then there are, of course, the 1,012 apps and programs that are supposed to help with learning and writing. Few of these techniques are particularly complicated in themselves, but they are usually used without any regard to the actual workflow, which then quickly becomes a mess as nothing really fits together. Working within this arrangement becomes extremely complicated indeed and difficult to get anything done.
Can I just say, I mean, if I heard, I think the term shots fired would, you know what I mean? These are fighting words. I mean, progressive summarization, you know, like build a second brain, you know, all of that. It all fits into that, where it's like, complicated.
Yeah, but reading this also, just to throw something out here, this is where I have sort of really mixed feelings as you try and progress through this, because on the one hand, you want to just start and let some of it be emergent. I accept that part of the premise, but there is also a part of this that some of these things only work if you embrace a system for it. And so I'm always a little bit worried that I've got 2/3 of the system and I'm missing a critical part, and therefore the system won't ultimately, the loop will never fully close. So I have this sort of anxiety sometimes about these systems, about which parts to let emerge and which parts I need to understand comprehensively before I can really execute.
As you should. As you should. I mean, I think every single one of us can raise our hands and tell you, 10 different stories of how we've been burned. But, like, ow. I spent 2 years, creating this beautiful Evernote landing page or this beautiful Notion page. And it's like, ow, it's useless. It doesn't have bidirectional linking at the block level. You know what I mean? It's like we've all been burned. And it's just, I think I'm gonna encourage courage, and I'm gonna encourage you to, even though we've been burned in the past, today is a new day, and this is a different thing. I mean, he's outright saying this is not the complicated, crazy, it has to be structured. You have to, at 7:05 a.m., you have to do this and do that. No, it's saying this is different. This is a bottom-up structure. This is mimicking how we actually learn outside of how we've been taught and indoctrinated to learn. So I'm just going to encourage you to give it a go one more time. And I know it's asking for a lot, but understand that you're not alone in feeling that way either, though.
Something I was thinking of doing is, like, I have the same problem as Roy. I ran into an obstacle today. I was like, okay, I need to know how to fill in. I know there's a hole in my structure, but then I think I put like a little to-do on it and then a date for the end of Rome. And if I don't come back and fix it after the Rome book club, I have like a little to-do list of things to go back and clean up once I think I might know how to fill the holes up.
And I'm just gonna, I can promise you that this is all very simple. It's practical, it's simple, and we're only a week and a half or 10 days in. We're not even a quarter of the way through, and it's like is that quarter 42? No, we're not even a quarter of the way through. And it's like, oh, everything is going to start opening up. Everything is going to start layering. And how Samantha was talking about, equals 23. Well, we have the answer now. That was the hard part. Now we get to go, okay, what's on this side of equal sign? Oh, 1, 2. Oh, okay. Well, this is easy. This is getting easier. It's getting easier. It's getting much easier. Oh, by the time you get to the hard part that everyone talks about as hard, it's like, oh, that's easy. But, it's do the guided writing exercises, watch the videos and really just think about it and think about it and go, why is that? And it'll start clicking, and yeah. I think we're here.
And if you stumble upon one idea and think that it might connect to another idea, what do you do when you employ all these different techniques? Go through all your books to find the right underlined sentence, reread all your journals and excerpts. And what do you do then? Write an excerpt about it? Where do you save it? And how does this help you to make new connections? Every little step suddenly turns into its own project without bringing the whole much further forward. Adding another promising technique to it then would make things only worse. This is why the slip box is not introduced as another technique, but as a crucial element in an overarching workflow that is stripped of everything that could distract from what is important. Good tools do not add features and more options to what we already have, but help to reduce distractions from the main work, which here is thinking. The slip box provides an external scaffold to think in and helps with those tasks our brains are not very good at. Most of all, objective storage of information. That's pretty much it. To have an undistracted brain to think with and a reliable collection of notes to think in is pretty much all we need. Everything else is just clutter.
And I just want to emphasize that as well. It's like, we're not going through any features or options or anything like that. It's just the simplest, simplest thing. I'm talking too much, but yeah, it's just to piggyback what earlier with Roy, it's like, you don't have to fear. I'm not going to teach you like this is the feature or thing you need to do. It's like, no, it's just revealing to ourselves what we already know. And I know it sounds hokey and metaphysical, but it's, you know, if it wasn't that way, then it wouldn't be simple. Vincent, you want to keep going? Or you can pass.
Yeah.
Keep going. Keep going.
Chapter 3.1, the toolbox. We need 4 tools, something to write with and something to write on. Pen and paper will do. A reference management system, the best programs are free. The slip box, the best program is free. An editor, whatever works best for you, very good ones are free. More is unnecessary, less is impossible. You need something to capture ideas whenever and wherever they pop into your head. Whatever you use, it should not require any thought, tension, or multiple steps to write down. It can be a notebook, a napkin, an app on your phone or iPad. These notes are not meant to be stored permanently. They will be deleted or chucked soon anyway. They only function as a reminder of a thought and are not meant to capture the thought itself, which requires time to phrase proper sentences and check facts. I recommend having pen and paper with you at all times. It's really hard to beat a notebook in its simplicity. If you use other tools, make sure everything ends up in one place, a central inbox or something like that, where you can process it soon, ideally within a day.
Samantha?
The reference system has 2 purposes: to collect the references, and the notes you take during your reading. I strongly recommend using a free program like Zotero, which allows you to make new entries via browser plugins or just by entering the ISBN or digital objective identifier number. Zotero also can be integrated into Microsoft Word. You can see them all there, which allows you to insert quotations without actually typing in the reference. That not only makes things easier, you can also mitigate the risk of messing things up when you add, edit, or delete additional references. So you can easily change the format according to the standards required by your professors or the journal you write for. You can add notes to each entry, but it would also be fine to write your notes by hand or link them to the reference if you prefer to write by hand at this stage. In that case, just give the notes a standardized title like author year and keep them in alphabetical order in one place. You can download Zotero for free. You'll find the links to all recommended programs on our website. And if you prefer to already work with another equally simple program, there's no reason not to use that one. The slip box. Some prefer the old-fashioned pen and paper version in a wooden box. That's fine. Computers can only speed up relatively minor parts of work anyway, like adding links and formatting references. They can't speed up the main part of the work, which is the thinking, the reading, and understanding. All you would need are sheets of paper about the size of a postcard and a box to keep them in. And even though there are clear benefits of handwriting, I recommend using the digital version, if only for mobility. Even though you can basically emulate the slip box with any program that allows setting links and tagging, I strongly recommend using the Zettelkasten. It is the only program I know that really implements the principles behind Lumen's system and is at the same time simple and easy to use. It's free and available for different operating systems, and you can download it from this cool website. Please consider sending us a donation to the developer.
So can I just say, so Daniel Ludique is amazing. The amount of work that he did to get Zettelkasten out into the world was phenomenal. And he's got a great sort of like 45-page like PDF document that's circling around the internet. But a lot of, well, like 95% of what I based how to do that in Rome is from his presentations. So, I mean, the reason that so basically there's 2 different schools of thought. You have Zettelkasten.de, you have Sasha and I forget his other name, but Zettelkasten and DE, they have a thing called the archive over here. And then you have Daniel Luedeke, which is ZKN over here. And so it's like they had two opposing sort of brands of Zettelkasten, and they had a falling out in 2015 in regards to this idea of not index notes, but what did he call it? It was like an overview, basically. And Daniel Luedeke was like, no, that's not a Zettelkasten. And then Zettelkasten DE was like, yeah, it is in the digital realm. And so anyways, that's just a little background history, but Daniel Luedeke, amazing, great work. He's a professor as well, but his sort of presentation that he gave, really looking at what Luhmann was talking about, hands down, some of the best material. I'll look for the link. I'll look for the link and I'll post it on the Daily Notes page, or I'll post it in the Rome Reading Room page.
Oh, okay.
After our call.
Finally, the editor. If you use Zotero, I recommend using one of the editors it's compatible with, because it makes life a lot easier if you don't have to type in every reference manually. Except for that, everything works fine. No editor can improve an argument. If you have a pen and paper, an editor, your slipbox, and reference system at hand, you're ready to go.
Getting the tools ready shouldn't have taken more than 5 to 10 minutes, but having the right tools is only one part of the equation. It is easy to get fooled by their simplicity. Many tried them out without really understanding how to work with them and were expectedly disappointed with the results. Tools are only as good as your ability to work with them. Everybody knows how to handle a flute. Blow into 110 and press your fingers on the holes according to the notes you're playing. Nobody would try it out once and then judge the instrument on what they hear. But with tools like the slipbox, we sometimes forget that the handling is as important as the possibilities of the tool itself. If we try to use a tool without putting any thought into the way we work with it, even the best tool would not be of much help. Slipbox, for example, would most likely be used as an archive for notes, or worse, a graveyard for thoughts. Unfortunately, there are quite a few explanations of Luhmann's technique on the internet that focus in a misleading way on the technicalities of the slipbox. This has led to plenty of misconceptions about its abilities, but things are changing. Luhmann's slipbox is currently the object of a long-term research project at the University of Bielefeld, and their first results have already given us a comprehensive understanding about how Luhmann really worked with it. You can look up for yourself some of the notes on their website. Soon, you will be able to access the whole digitalized slipbox online. Add to this understanding recent psychological insights about reading, about learning, creativity, and thinking. We also get a pretty good picture about why it works. And it is indeed crucially important not only to know how it works or how to work with it, but also why it works. Only then will you be able to tweak it for your own needs. There we go. I've got it up on my page. And this is what this book is for, to give you all the resources you need to work in the best possible way with the best technique available. By keeping just a few basic principles in mind and with an understanding of the logic behind the file system, I see no reason why anyone should not be able to replicate Luhmann's formula for successful learning, writing, and research. And he had a phrase up there that's really stuck with me about any previous systems that I've used, is the term a graveyard for thoughts. You know, I've got a whole, everything I do is like sticky notes. I've got a whole stack here of sticky notes. I mean, that's pads of paper or whatever. It's all a graveyard for thoughts. I mean, writing things down does help me to remember it in the moment. Sometimes I write it down with no intention of having to need it later, just like it'll cement it in my mind for that brief period of time, and that helps. But it won't be there forever. And I think that's where I said before, I'm planting my flag in Rome. And it's like, this is where my notes will go, and I'll build on them from there.
Thank you. I'm gonna go to the next chapter. Sorry about that. I was uploading that PDF.
Hey, Bo, do you use Zotero, or what do you use to kind of start out? Like, are you using like?
I'm not in the research fields.
You're not using.
I don't use Zotero. No, I don't need
Internet?
the bibliography is just going to be a link.
Do you use like Pocket or Instapaper or anything like that, and then move it into Readwise?
No, just as long as I have the URL or the YouTube
Yeah,
link.
are you able to go?
Hello? Yeah, just as long as I have the source. The source is going to be, you know what I mean? It's like that it's referencing the source. So if it's a PDF article, I'll put the PDF into Rome, or if it's a URL, I'll put the URL into Rome. If it's a YouTube lecture, I'll put that into Rome with the link and the timestamp. If it's an iBook, then I'll just sort of take the Readwise. I don't really use Readwise. I just rather copy paste it. But yeah, as long as I have the source material, then I can find where it is again. I feel like Zotero is more for like research, isn't it?
I think it depends what field you're in.
Yeah, I think Antoinette left. Christine?
Sir, I wait. Hello po.
Oh, you're still here. I thought you were gonna.
Yes.
Okay, please.
I'm I will just note for Sir Michael Bar. The Sotero system from site to right po is amazing. Yung kay Sir Cortex Pertura po. There. So, for students, the need for writing mainly appears in the form of examination. In this understanding, the written work represents a preceded performance, namely learning, understanding, and the ability to analyze other texts critically. By writing, students demonstrate what they have learned, show their ability to think critically, and the ability to develop ideas. This understanding is related to the idea that the students prepare for independent research. In this mindset, the writing of a paper is just another skill to be learned. It is compartmentalized from the other task. It is seen as one task among others. Students should not only learn to write papers, but also learn facts, be able to discuss their ideas in seminars, and listen carefully to lectures. Writing papers is seen as a task in itself with a beginning and an end. Almost all books written on academic writing start from this assumption, and almost all of them proceed accordingly, describing an idealized process in certain consecutive steps. Yes, I agree on this po. I'm reading about this and it's so complicated. Yes, next. First, the task to write is given. Then there is the challenge to find a topic or a specific angle on a problem. The research to do is starting with the collection of the relevant literature, followed by reading the material, processing it, and coming to a conclusion. Writing is what follows. In the beginning stands the question to be answered, followed by an overview of the literature, the discussion of it, and the conclusion. This, according to this thinking, prepares you for doing independent research. Alas, it does not. If you become successful in your research, it was not because you learned to approach writing in this way, but Despite it. This book is based on another assumption. Studying does not prepare students for independent research. It is independent research. Nobody starts from scratch and everybody is already able to think for themselves. Studying done properly is research because it is about gaining insight that cannot be anticipated and will be shared within the scientific community under public scrutiny. There is no such thing as private knowledge in academia. An idea kept private is as good as one you never had, and a fact no one can reproduce is no fact at all. Making something public always means to write it down so it can be read. There is no such thing as a history of unwritten ideas. That's it.
School is different. Pupils are not usually encouraged to follow their own learning paths, question and discuss everything the teacher is teaching, and move on to another topic if something does not generate interesting insight. The teacher is there for the pupils to learn. But as Wilhelm von Humboldt, founder of the Humboldt University in Berlin and brother to the great explorer Alexander von Humboldt, put it, the professor is not there for the student, and the student is not there for the professor. Both are there only for the truth. The truth is always a public matter. Everything within the university aims at some kind of publication. A written piece does not necessarily need to be accepted in an international journal to become public. In fact, the vast majority of what is written and discussed is not published in this narrow sense. The review process itself is a form of presenting an idea publicly to the peers, and so is everything a student hands over to a professor or lecturer. Even the handout for a presentation discussed with fellow students is a written piece made public. It is public because in the discussion, it does not matter anymore what the author meant, only what is there in writing. The moment the author can be removed from the scene, the written piece is a public claim on truth. The criteria for a convincing argument are always the same, regardless of who the author is or the status of the publisher. They have to be coherent and based on facts. Truth does not belong to anyone, it is the outcome of the scientific exchange of written ideas. This is why the presentation and production of knowledge cannot be separated, but are rather two sides of the same coin. Working as if nothing else counts than writing does not mean spending more time writing at the expense of everything else. Only if we compartmentalize our work into different isolated tasks will it seem like focusing on writing reduces the time we spend on other tasks. But it does not mean to read less, for this is the main source of the writing material. It doesn't mean to attend fewer lectures or seminars because they provide you with the ideas to write about and the questions worth answering. Attending lectures is also one of the best ways to get an idea about the current state of research, not to mention the ability to ask and discuss questions. Focusing on writing also doesn't mean to stop giving presentations or finding other ways of making your thoughts public. Where else could you get feedback for your ideas?
Focusing on writing as if nothing else counts does not necessarily mean you should do everything else less well, but it certainly makes you do everything else differently. Having a clear, tangible purpose when you attend a lecture, discussion, or seminar will make you more engaged and sharpen your focus. You will not waste your time with the attempt to figure out what you should learn. Rather, you will try to learn as efficiently as possible so you can quickly get to the point where actual open questions arise, as these are the only questions worth writing about. You quickly learn to distinguish good-sounding arguments from actual good ones, as you will have to think them through whenever you try to write them down and connect them with your previous knowledge. It will change the way you read as well. You will become more focused on the most relevant aspects, knowing that you cannot write down everything. You will read in a more engaged way because you cannot rephrase anything in your own words if you don't understand what it is about. By doing this, you will. Whoop.
Can I just interject one thing? And just what he's talking about right there is exactly what we're after. You know, it's slowing things down, but also it's the more as we build this Zettelkasten out, you're going to see this thing that happens where what we're interested in becomes clearer. And because these declarative statements are, the root word of declarative is clarere, which is clarity. Because of the clarity that we've had with these thoughts and these notes that we've created and connected and related to other notes, what happens is we get clearer on what we're interested in and what we want to intake in, what we want to consume. And it's just, it's fascinating to see this. And it's like hang on to that. If anything, hang on to that where, you know, it's what you're interested in becomes clearer, and you're going to be able to like read through an article and go, oh, well, I already know that. I can go to, you know, or this is interesting. This is a different way of looking at it. Oh, okay, well, I'll take that and I'll pull that out. But now that 50-page PDF has gone down to 2 fleeting notes because you already have 35 other permanent notes that are talking about that already, if that makes sense. But anyways, I just want to interject that that's what he's saying right here is exactly true.
I keep going. Okay. By doing this, you will elaborate on the meaning, which will make it much more likely that you will remember it. You also have to think beyond the things you read, because you need to turn it into something new. And by doing everything with the clear purpose of writing about it, you will do what you do deliberately. Deliberate practice is the only serious way of becoming better at what we are doing. If you change your mind about the importance of writing, you will also change your mind about everything else. Even if you decide never to write a single line of a manuscript, you will improve your reading, thinking, and other intellectual skills just by doing everything as if nothing counts other than writing. On to Beverly.
Simplicity.
Go ahead.
Simplicity is paramount. We tend to think that big transformations have to start with an equally big idea, but more often than not, it is the simplicity of an idea that makes it so powerful and so often overlooked in the beginning. And just as an aside, I think that is what we were talking about at the beginning of tonight. I think that captures it pretty well. Boxes, for example, are simple. Malcolm McLean, the owner of a trucking company and former trucker himself, regularly got stuck in traffic on the crowded coastal highways. When he came up with an idea to circumvent the congested roads, it was a simple one. He had no clue that it would tip the world in a new direction. He did not foresee that his simple idea would reshape the political landscape, let some nations rise to the top and others fall behind, make century-old professions redundant, give birth to new ideas, new industries, and would barely leave a single person on earth unaffected by it. I'm speaking, of course, of the shipping container, which is basically just a box. When McLean converted the tanker Ideal X to be able to carry 58 containers and set it to sail on 26 April 1956, it was just because it made more sense to ship parts of a lorry than the whole lorry itself, which in itself made more sense than to have them stand in traffic for days. He simply did not aim to turn the world trade upside down and pave the way for Asia to become the next big economic power. He just didn't want to get stuck in traffic anymore. It wasn't just that nobody foresaw the impact of something as simple as this box. Most ship owners had in fact considered the idea of putting different kinds of products into the same size boxes as fairly abstruse. Experienced stevedores were able to use the storage room on a ship optimally by arranging and fitting the goods, and every good came in its optimal package. Why replace it with an obviously less optimal solution? And speaking of suboptimal, why would anyone want to try to fit square boxes into a round-shaped ship body anyway? Ship owners also didn't have many customers who wanted to ship exactly that amount that fit into a container. That either left customers unhappy or containers half empty, or filled with goods from different customers, which meant that you had to unpack and rearrange the containers to untangle different orders in every single harbor. That did not sound very efficient to the ears of experienced shippers. And then you had the problem with the boxes themselves. Once unloaded and sent off on trucks, you had to find a way to get them back. McLean lost hundreds of containers this way. It was a logistical nightmare. And by the way, McLean wasn't the only one who had the idea to use containers on ships. Many others tried it too. Almost all gave up on the idea soon after, not because they were too stubborn to accept a great idea, but because they lost too much money on it. The idea was simple, but it wasn't easy to put it efficiently into practice. In hindsight, we know why they failed. The ship owners tried to integrate the container into their usual way of working without changing the infrastructure and their routines. Bo has a point.
Well, the reason I read this and I was like, what does this mean? And I was thinking about it like, well, obviously I don't have any indoctrination in regards to studying. I've never even taken notes before Zettelkasten. And so, I didn't have to integrate the container. Like, I wasn't trying to integrate this container that he's talking about into the old way. I didn't have an old way. So, I mean, I took to this like duck to water. And so that's what I felt like I kept on seeing with everyone else's Zettelkasten in the digital realm, is everyone else was like, okay, here's how we're going to integrate it into our current infrastructure, in our current routines. And I was like, no, but there's another way to do it. There's another way to do it. And so that I really hope everyone understands that I'm not looking at it this way. I'm looking at it from over here. And sometimes it takes that outside vantage point to see the problem that's usually like right here. It's like, the elephant story or whatever, but it's like, I want to emphasize that when I think about what these 42 days are, I'm not trying to integrate the container of Zettelkasten and Rome research in these traditional infrastructure and these traditional routines. And I'll let you keep on. Sorry, I got excited.
They tried to benefit from the obvious simplicity of loading containers onto ships without letting go of what they were used to. In the beginning, the perception was very much shaped by what worked before, and only the most immediate effects were visible. Owners looked at the bags and crates of goods and wondered why they should pack them a second time into another box. They were glad when they unloaded their goods at the harbor and they were eager to move on. They wondered why they should go container hunting instead. They looked at the ships they had and wondered how to fit containers into them. McLean understood better than others that it is not the perspective of the ship owners that count, but the purpose of the whole trade: to bring goods from the producer to the final destination. Only after aligning every single part of the delivery chain, from packing to delivery, from the design of ships to the design of the harbors, was the full potential of the container unleashed.
I feel like that's bidirectional linking at the block level. Only after aligning every single part of the delivery chain. That's like the technology. We needed the technology of Rome. Like Logsec can do what Rome does, by the way, now. I mean, there's plenty of apps that have built themselves to do what Rome can do. It's just Rome just happened to be the first one to do it right, to figure it out. I can't pronounce this name. I'm gonna muck it up. Mrigunk?
Yeah, that's Mrigunk.
Okay. Yeah. Not bad. Not bad, eh?
Okay. When the advantages became obvious, second order effects came into play and went into a self-reinforcing positive feedback loop. The more harbors were able to handle containers, the more container ships were needed to be built, which made shipping cheaper, which increased the range of goods worth shipping, which created more traffic, which made bigger container ships economical, which created more demand for infrastructure, and so on. It wasn't just another way of shipping goods, it was a whole new way of doing business. Many students and academic writers think like the early ship owners when it comes to note taking. They handle their ideas and findings in the way it makes immediate sense. If they read an interesting sentence, they underline it. If they have a comment to make, they write it into the margins. If they have an idea, they write it into their notebook. And if an article seems important enough, they make the effort and write an excerpt. Working like this will leave you with a lot of different notes in many different places. Writing then means to rely heavily on your brain to remember where and when these notes were written down. A text must then be conceptualized independently from these notes, which explains why so many resort to brainstorming to arrange the resources afterwards according to this preconceived idea. In this textual infrastructure, this so often taught workflow, it indeed does not make much sense to rewrite these notes and put them into a box, only to take them out again later when a certain quote or reference is needed during writing and thinking. In the old system, the question is, under which topic do I store this note? In the new system, the question is, in which context will I want to stumble upon it again? Most students sort their material by topic or even by seminars and semester. From the perspective of someone who writes, that makes as much sense as sorting your errands by purchasing date and the store they were bought from. Can't you can't find your trousers? Maybe they are with the bleach you bought the same day at your department store. Hmm. Okay, I'll let Colby continue from here.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so the soapbox is the shipping container of the academic world. Instead of having different storage for different ideas, everything goes into the same slipbox and is standardized into the same format. Instead of focusing on the same in-between steps and trying to make a science out of underlining systems, reading techniques or excerpts within writing is streamlined towards one thing only: insight that can be published. The biggest advantage compared to a top-down storage system organized by topics is that the slipbox becomes more and more valuable the more it grows, instead of getting messier and confusing. If you sort by topic, you're faced with the dilemma of either adding more and more notes to one topic, which makes them increasingly harder to find, or adding more and more topics and subtopics to it, which only shifts the mess to another level. The first system is designed to find things you deliberately search for, putting all the responsibility on your brain. The slipbox is designed to present you with ideas you have already forgotten, allowing your brain to focus on thinking instead of remembering. Interesting. Even though the slipbox being organized bottom up does not face the trade-off problem between too many or too few topics, it too can lose its value when notes are added to it indiscriminately. It can only play out its strengths when we aim for a critical mass, which depends not only on the number of notes, but also their quality and the way that they are handled. To achieve
Can
a
I say,
critical mass.
Colby, can I just add one thing? When he talks about aiming for a critical mass, you know, if you do the fleeting literature and literature note steps thoroughly, then the quality is already there. And I just want to state that in Rome, the ease in which we are able to extract out the fleeting notes and extract out the literature notes allows for the quality to be automatic, if that makes sense. And I just wanted to state that. Please.
Okay. I'm still, to achieve a critical mass, it is crucial to distinguish clearly between three types of notes. Fleeting notes, which are only reminders of information, can be written in any kind of way and will end up in the trash within a day or two. Permanent notes, which will never be thrown away and contain the necessary information in themselves in a permanently understandable way. They are always stored in the same way, in the same place, either in the reference system or within it for print in the slip box. Okay. Project notes, which are only relevant to one particular project. They are kept within a project-specific folder and can be discarded or archived after the project is finished. Let's see. Okay. Only if the notes.
Do you guys want me to break this down a little bit?
Sure.
So fleeting notes traditionally were meant to sort of be one-word phrases that were meant to just sort of capture the idea as you think about it all day. And then those fleeting notes are processed into literature notes, and these literature notes are turned into permanent notes. And so that process that's what I'm talking about with time. It doesn't take a long time to go from fleeting to permanent notes. And that literature note is sort of a substep between fleeting and permanent notes. And then the reference notes now is, instead of having two notes, one would go into the permanent slip box and the other one would go to the bibliography or the reference box. We've put that all together in the digital realm with, you have the permanent note nested in with the reference notes. And then project notes is what I was talking about earlier, where the project notes are sort of, again, I wouldn't even worry too much about project notes, because I didn't even create a project Zettelkasten until 60, 70 notes, because that's going to be completely firewalled. So it's firewalled in regards to relevant notes and connecting relevant notes to the main Zettelkasten. And the reason for that is because that way it doesn't dilute your conversation partner. And so fleeting permanent project notes and which aren't listed are literature notes, and then which aren't listed are reference note or relevant notes as well. Just heads up. It will get clearer. Weeks 3, 4, and 5, it'll get much clearer. I just wanted to touch upon that though.
Yeah, I hope so. It's a little confusing, but okay, let's see here. I think this is where we were here. Only if the notes of these three categories are kept separated, it will be possible to build a critical mass of ideas within the slip box. One of the major reasons for not getting much writing or publishing done lies in the confusion of these categories. A typical mistake made by many diligent students who are adhering to the advice to keep a scientific journal. A friend of mine does not let any interesting findings or quotes he stumbles upon dwindle away and writes everything down. He always carries a notebook with him and often makes a few quick notes during conversation. The advantage is obvious. No idea ever gets lost. The disadvantages are serious though, as he treats every note as if it belongs to the permanent category. The notes will never build up a critical mass. The collection of good ideas is diluted to significance by all the other notes, which are only relevant for a specific project or actually not that good on second sight. On top of that, the strict chronological order does not offer any help to find, combine, or rearrange ideas in productive sense. It is not surprising that my friend has a bookshelf filled with notebooks full of wonderful ideas, but not a single publication to show. Before I continue, could I say something on that, or? I guess not. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, what are you thinking?
Of course.
I was just thinking that's, I think that's a good point though, right there, because that's based, I think that's a lot of how the most hierarchical systems work, because I don't know, I've been reading in the chat, like some of us were using OneNote before and Evernote, and even if you're using just binders of books, I think a lot of us know how to collect the information already pretty easily, but the problem is you get all those ideas that, well, now how do you actually connect it together? You know what I mean? So, because I've seen lots of apps before where they're using like tags and all that, which sounds really good when you've used it in the last 6 months or you're actively using that idea. But then when it's like, oh, what was that thing from 10 years ago? Where is it now? And you have no idea. And you spend more time looking for it than you just give up and do a Google search, because you can find it through Google faster than you can find in your own note system, which is pretty sad, really. But anyway, that's all I wanted to say on that.
Can I just add a point to Colby's thought there? I'm taking this, I'm processing this piece here and what you were just saying, and I wonder, like hypothetically, if you had an 8-hour day and you were reading for 8 hours, one of the things I'm trying to get in the habit of is, instead of looking at it as an 8-hour day where I'm writing, where I'm reading, and writing, fleeting notes and stuff, I'm only reading and doing that for 6 hours. And for 2 hours, I'm building in time to process what it is that those fleeting notes. And on my last paper I just finished, that was something I changed from the first paper, was I was making time to curate my thoughts. And I'm building towards the Zettelkasten and skill set. But you have to, I think it's really critical, you've got to build time so don't just max out your time taking notes. You got to have that time to curate and go, this is crap, this is good, this is a pattern, whatever. Bo, thumbs up? Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of obvious.
I would double down. I would do 7 hours of processing and an hour of actually taking in more information.
Oh, wow.
Information's everywhere, you know? I mean, it takes me like, there was a PDF that PDFs, like a 5-page PDF takes forever to process, because I want to make sure that I wring it out. I want to make sure that I get it all. And then I want to know where it fits in my Zettelkasten. Like, I don't want to just Google my answers anymore. I want to Google my past thoughts. I was on a intellect call, and it was like, I had this idea, and it was just like, all I had to do was search. And then I had everything there. And it's just, when you experience that, I think your priorities in regards to, well, do I need to learn more now, or do I need to process more now? And you're going to find that balance. But I think the hardest part from these one-on-one coaching sessions, is there a lag, by the way? I feel like I'm lagging a little bit, but
yeah,
the hardest part from these coaching sessions was listening to when I was asking them the 5 whys, listening to their reasons why. Because everyone was resonating that idea of what he was talking about in that paragraph before in regards to a graveyard of ideas. And I just go, that tears me apart, because it's like, ouch, you know? Ow.
Yeah, I think that's the greatest issue. Like, even with Rome, I have huge issues. Like, I'm just trying to put faith in here and hoping that this works, but I'm getting to the point where I'm getting frustrated because everything's, so I don't know how to structure it. I don't know how to interconnect it. And I have reading issues, so I can't read as quickly as everyone. And I'm starting to realize that as I realize everyone's on day 10 or something. And I'm like, I'm struggling massively, but that's a different topic. But just about to interconnect it where you can relate to it later and reuse it, and that is, I understand the theory, but application will be interesting in the weeks to come, basically. So,
and I have to emphasize and stress that idea that each thing is going to build upon the previous day. So you can't cut the corners because each thing does line up. It's the algebra is going to lead to the trigonometry. That the trigonometry is going to lead to the pre-calculus. The pre-calculus is going to lead to it just keeps building.
Yeah, I believe in what you're saying. It's just it's kind of like you said before. Almost every other app is playing that same thing with that same approach. And then, of course, implementation and actually doing it's two different things to see if it lives up to it. But I've seen your videos from before, so I kind of have an idea where you're going. So I'm excited to learn how to implement in my own system, or for myself. But
yeah,
because most of the stuff you see out there are all these stuff that's not really related to at least someone like me. Like I see like a lot of people who are content creation or researchers or these programmers, and I'm like, okay, how does that relate? But
I think
different topic.
If I can emphasize one thing, it's that I'm not teaching you anything. I'm not a coach. I'm not a teacher. I'm not an instructor. This isn't a 42-day course. This is all I'm doing is asking you questions and making you write so you can figure out what works for you. Because just like some people are going to have to use Zotero, other people are going to do Otter, other people are going to hire a virtual assistant. The Zettelkasten simple lightweight structure is completely idiosyncratic. It's completely personalized. And so if anyone tells you that this is what you need to do to learn how to do a Zettelkasten, they're full of shit and run the other way. What I'm telling you is that no, you need to do the work in order for you to figure this out. And I'm going to be here to encourage you and ask you the right questions to elicit that from you.
Oh yeah, this is totally different than what I thought. I was expecting a book club, and it's turned into something different, which is all good.
We're reading the book. It's a book club.
Well, if I'd realized Roman had onboarding course way back, I would have joined the book club way back, because I think I never had time for a book club because I didn't have enough free time.
I think this is a new development too. We've got another 3 minutes here, just to be fresh on time. Do you want to go ahead and let's go ahead and hammer this last part out?
Okay, I think we're on a typical mistake, or
I think it was the second one. The
second
typical mistake.
Okay, I didn't think I got through that. Okay, I'll start there. Okay, the second typical mistake is to collect notes only related to specific projects. On first sight, it makes much more sense you decide on what you're going to write about and then collect everything that helps you do that. The disadvantage is that you have to start all over after each project and cut off all other promising lines of thought. That means that everything you found, thought, or encountered during the time of a project will be lost. If you try to mitigate the effects by opening a new folder for every potential new project whenever you stumble upon something that might be interesting for that, you'll soon end up with an overwhelming amount of unfinished projects. If that in itself does not become a drag on your motivation, the task of keeping track of them will. But most importantly, without a permanent reservoir of ideas, you'll not be able to develop any major ideas over longer periods of time because you're restricting yourself either to the length of a single project or the capacity of your memory. Exceptional ideas need much more than that. Okay, the third typical mistake is, of course, to treat all notes as fleeting notes. You can easily spot this approach by the mess that comes with it, or rather by the cycle of slowly growing piles of materials, followed by the impulse for major cleanups. Just collecting unprocessed fleeting notes inevitably leads to chaos. Even small amounts of unclear and unrelated notes lingering around your desk will soon induce the wish of starting from scratch again. What all of these category confusing approaches have in common is that the benefits of taking a note taking decreases with the number of notes you keep. More notes will make it more difficult to retrieve the right ones and bring related ones together in a playful way. But it should be just the opposite. The more you learn and collect, the more beneficial your notes should become, the more ideas you can mingle and give birth to new ones, and the easier it should be to write an intelligent text with less effort. Okay. It is important to reflect on the purpose of these different types of notes. Fleeting notes are there for capturing ideas quickly while you're busy doing something else. When you're in a conversation, listening to a lecture, here's something noteworthy, or an idea pops into your mind while you're running errands. A quick note is the best you can do without interrupting what you're in the middle of doing. That might even apply to reading. If you want to focus on a text without interrupting your reading flow, then you might want to just underline sentences or write short comments in the margins. It is important to understand, though, that underlining sentences or writing comments in the margins are also just fleeting notes and do nothing to elaborate on a text. They will very soon become completely useless unless you do something with them. If you already know that you will not go back to them, don't take these kinds of notes in the first place. Take proper notes instead. Fleeting notes are only useful if you review them within a day or so and turn them into proper notes you can use later. Fleeting literature notes can make sense if you need an extra step to understand or grasp an idea, but they will not help you in the later stages of writing processes, as no underlined sentence will ever present itself when you need it in the development of an argument. These kinds of notes are just...
Can I say one thing? We have to remember again, it's, where were we? Where he's talking about fleeting notes that have to be processed within a day or so and then throw them away. We also need to remember that he's talking about 1950s. And Sonke isn't creating anything, he's just reporting. This is the research that he did. This is what he learned, that what Luhmann did. And in 1950s, that's what he had to do. You had the time and the place and the opportunity to capture a fleeting note and process it within the next 24 hours. I know there's a big lag, but just bear with me here. What I'm saying is that with the current technology, you could solve the problem of not having the time. Like, listen, life is in session. This is 2021. And if you don't have the time to process these notes like he's talking about, there has to be another way. And if you can capture something a little bit more in depth than what he's talking about with one word, then you can actually come back to a note a week later, 2 months later. As long as you capture the essence and what I like, for instance, I'll capture a voice memo and that captures 4 to 5 minutes and it gives me all the context I need. So when I'm ready to go back into the fleeting notes and process them into literature notes, I do it when I want to do it. And if I do that process thoroughly enough, I don't have to wait. I don't have to have this time frame of 48 hours. I have other options available to me in regards to the technology that is available to us. Otter, Trent, just using the voice memo app on your phone, whatever that looks like, there's more options now. And just realize that. I just wanted to make that clear as well.
Yeah, I was wondering about that, if we're supposed to throw any of that stuff away or not with fleeting and all that. But I guess that's a little different. So is there any point where you throw it away, or do you kind of keep it all except for maybe like your resources? Or
I mean, I look at it like, what's like, do I have a limit of the notes that I can store? Like, I think everything that I abstract out is going to be essentially helpful when I look back at it at a later time, isn't it?
Well, I guess it depends how we're defining a fleeting note within Rome, because if you're bringing it at the block level and indenting it and kind of connecting it, and I'm not aware of how this is going to work out yet, but if you're, imagine the pages and the attributes are going to come into it as well. And I don't know what the full power is yet of the attributes, because Connor's only hinted at it
I
for
don't
quite
use
a
any
while now.
attributes. I don't use any attributes. The only reason I'm using attributes now is just so we can search for specific terms as a group. But in the actual Zettelkasten, you don't need any attributes.
I haven't used any attributes myself yet, just because I don't see an advantage at this point in time, unless he changes his mind. But like I said, I'm kind of stumbling my way through. But my point is, we're using all of the block levels and we're kind of indenting it to kind of create that step or ladder effect. I'm imagining you don't have to throw it away like you did back then, because you take that block and now you can interconnect it. I think it's going to be a matter of instead of throwing it away, because back then it would have been on an index card. So you had to throw it away and turn to something else. Because we're in the digital world, we can look at that now, and maybe that's where you have it tagged as a fleeting note. Then you look at it and you're like, oh, I'm going to change it, modify, add to it, and now it turns into the next stage and the next stage. And I think, sorry, I just got some ideas on this, is why I just wanted to talk. I have no one to talk to this stuff about with, but I think that's one of the powers of Rome over some of the other bi-directional apps out there, because I've played a lot in this kind of stuff before, but there's a lot of apps where they can do the bi-directional linking and they can do some of the transclusion to a certain extent. But if you're paying attention to what Connor's doing, especially when you pay attention to the block reference, or whatever term you want to use, there's a lot of bi-directional apps that they can do the same thing and grab it. But the fact that with Rome, you can grab it, replace it with original text, put it with alias, do the transclusion, do all this different stuff. Like you can do like 10 different steps if you're looking at it, plus the children, the text. Like before, I was trying to treat you like a parent before, but then I was realizing, oh, I'm just going to create a reference. I don't even copy anything now. I just use a reference there. I turn it into text. I change it, then convert it back, swap it back to the original. I'm like, whoa, what is going on here?
I do have to stop you just because I want to respect everyone's time. But Colby, I mean, we can chat about this later. But
okay, sorry.
But you're definitely on point here. I mean, we've got a lot left right here. I say we just stop. I'm just going to go in and create a bookmark here. I feel like this is a good place to stop anyways. I do.
I'm getting pretty tired myself.
And so I'll just bookmark it here for now.
Should we finish that paragraph so we get to the most, or?
Yeah, do you want to go and finish that out?
Yeah, at least so we're at the next bullet point.
Yeah, I think it was here.
I know where I was now.
I think it was right here. Fleeting notes are only useful if you review them within a day or so.
Sorry, I'm not sure where we are now.
Right here, I highlighted it.
Okay, I'll just read yours then.
Look on the Zoom.
Yeah. Fleeting literature notes can make sense if you need an extra step to understand or grasp an idea, but they will not help you in the later stage of the writing process, as no underlying sentence will ever present itself when you need it in the development of an argument. These kinds of notes are just reminders of a thought, which you haven't had the time to elaborate on yet. Permanent notes, on the other hand, are written in a way that can still be understood, even when they have been forgotten the context they were taken from. And excellent. I guess that would be a good place to stop, right?
Yeah. I just want to thank everyone. This was so much fun. I mean, I love this. This is.
Yeah, it's great.
This is what we do. You know, I just love all of this. I just wanted to respect everyone's time, but I mean, if you guys want to keep talking, keep chatting.
Oh, I can talk about Zettelkasten all night.
See you, Omar. Thank you.
See y'all.
I'm just waiting for the big announcement.
Bye, Christine. What's the announcement?
I missed it last week.
Oh yeah.
Remember last week on the Twitter where he's like, "Oh, I missed out." And I went on there and like, "You missed the big reveal."
Yeah, it's the secret of the Zettelkasten.
And then everyone else was like, "Yeah, it was so good. You missed that." Like no one even knew I was joking, but they were all like going in on it.
Total enlightenment.
Yeah, I like that, Chris. Anyway, so I'm staying here till I get that.
I think really what resonated with me today was when who was it? He's talking about the pain. You could just hear the pain in his voice. Who was it? Was it? Why am I blanking? Where he was talking about like, well, it hasn't worked before. I'm scared that it's not going to work again. And I just, yeah, that, if I had a reason on why I do this, I mean, that's right up there too, you know, because I mean, it doesn't take a genius to see that pattern with everyone that I was talking with and sort of walking through this. And it's just, yeah, it hurts, but we don't have to just, we can give it another chance. And that's really what I'm after. That's just, if we can give it one more chance, you got me, okay? I'm enthusiastic, I'm passionate, I'm just crazy enough to do it. And I'm not even doing anything. All I'm doing is distilling down what I've learned over the last couple of months, you know? And I'm not showing you I'm not teaching anything. I'm just getting you to sort of do it. And yeah, it's tough. And I almost feel like everyone is sort of trying to throw other things into it, like, oh, well, you should do it this way, or you should do it that way, and you should make it more complex, and maybe you can do it this way. And I'm like, no, but you guys are missing the point. It's simple. You know, he says it in the book. All you need is a pen, a notepad, an editor, and time. And honestly, that's all it is. It's literally a $15 a month Roam subscription, and that's it. That's it. Honestly, everything else is copy paste, or you know, you drag something over here, but that's literally it.
Hey, Bo, like about 2 months ago, I paid Christian at zettelkasten.de. I paid him for 1 hour of coaching, and because I was going down the path of the archive, and but I was a little bit nervous about just being kind of orphaned on a Mac laptop and everything. But he, just to kind of pick up on what you were saying, like obviously the archive is super simple. It's text. I mean, it's like there's no proprietary lock-in. The UID thing is you mentioned that earlier. We don't have to talk about that part. But he did say, this goes back to your 80-20, like spend 80% of your time curating your stuff. He said, he was sort of emphasizing the same point. It's simple, but the magic comes in that spending time. I don't know if it's consolidating. I don't know if that's the right word, but you're bringing your knowledge. And that was a piece I hadn't realized, was that, because I just thought, oh, by all the linking and all the hyperlinking, magic's going to happen. No, there's no magic. The magic comes in, you spend a ton of time thinking about it, going, oh, here's an idea, or here's a whatever. And I'm probably using the wrong words, but you know what I mean? Like it sort of ties to what you're talking about a little bit.
Let me share my screen here for a second. I mean, listen, we're just gonna hang out. There's like,
and I'm motivated.
I want to show you how and why this all works. And let me zoom in a little bit. So the reason that any of this works is because when I go into Roam and I click on one of these, it's like this. The reason I can go in here, the reason I have everything nested, is because I want to be able to know where things come from, and to have it where it's like, oh, okay, I get it. This is actually my project Zettelkasten. Let me go to my main Zettelkasten here, but just make sure that the picture shows up here. You know, so basically, it's literally, this is it. This is all it is. And everything starts from one of these top level conversations, but none of these conversations, I wasn't thinking about these topics. They happened naturally because before I got to artificial intelligence, I only had these parent level blocks, right? And so when I was talking about sort of, I think this will help because I'm going to get to the one that he's talking about here. So this is the sort of branching that he's talking about. So I really thought about these questions like, well, how can I do this? Like, this isn't what he meant, because this is what Evernote is. This is where you have a folder, and you do a hashtag and you connect it. And I was like, well, what the hell is he talking about? And then the more that I went into this, the more that I started understanding that this is what we want to do. We want to have these wild relationships that, like, you see this branch right here? System boundary reality. This thread right here is not connected to system complexity contingency. But if I can connect these two ideas, that's the insight. And what I'm doing is now I'm connecting what I know with what I know, but it's completely different conversations or different threads of thought, if that makes sense. I'm going to zoom out again. And so, and then the register that he's talking about here, this is the sort of index node. And so it's taking all of these ideas and it's going, well, how can I do this in Rome? And so when I do this in Rome, it looks something like this. I mean, it's first I had to learn what a Zettelkasten was, and then I had to learn what Rome was. And a Zettelkasten has only been like, how to take smart notes has only been around since 2017. Rome has only been around since literally 2020, like June 9th, 2020. So this is all very new. And I saw that and I was like, well, maybe you can apply the two together. And so if I go into something like Zettelkasten here, you'll notice that this is the craziest part. It's like, I'm going to go ahead and expand all these, right? Let's go ahead and expand this, expand them all. And so now I literally have, this is all my conversations with Zettelkasten, right? And I'm going to zoom out a little bit just so you can see the whole context of it. You don't have to necessarily see all the words. Let me zoom it out a little bit more, make sure you can see everything here. Again, this is my, basically, this is my thread of, let me just do Zettelkasten branching real quick, just so you can understand the idea. So this picture right here, right? I wanted to mimic this picture. I wanted to mimic this picture, which is basically how the branching works inside of a slip box. I wanted to mimic this inside of Rome. And this is how I figured how to do it. This is the threading of the conversations. You nest it underneath. You'll notice how as it goes down, you have this little CSS that shows you where I am. And it shows you, okay, well, bottom-up structure is connected to breaking from tradition, but it's not on the same conversation as connectedness and technical advancements. And so I was like, how can I mimic this in Rome, right? But then just mimicking this is the Vogelzettel, right? This is the nested sequence of notes. But this isn't what a Zettelkasten is. This is basically an archive. The Zettelkasten is when you can connect these, when you can connect a note over here with a note over here. And this is where it was like, what can Rome do? Inline block references, inline block references, inline block references. Now, the power of it is the fact that if I click on this, which is a completely different thread of thought, let's say destiny, right? Completely different thread of thought. But the question that I was asking was, how can I stumble upon this note at a later time? And for some reason, when I was creating this destiny permanent note, I had, for some reason, put in vision. And it kind of makes sense. So let's click on this. December 4th, 2020. Completely different train of thought, but the scope in which I'm looking at what I'm working on gives me the focus that I need, because time is valuable, is priceless, but also scope or the focus or the concentration of that time. And so now I have all my fleeting notes right here if I need it. If I don't need it, I can just go like this and I'm good to go. I can go to the next note.
So what you're saying is every block is a center. Every block has the potential to be a topic.
Every block is like, has the potential to take you to a completely different train of thought. And you don't lose where you are. The idea is this GPS. You always, like, the reason that Sonke was like, you need to do index notes, you want to have entry points, is because that gives you you know where you are. Like, why is the GPS so important? Because it shows you where you are at all times through triangulation. And so if I know exactly where I am, so if I click on this permanent note, it's going to show me exactly where I am. It's going to show me exactly how I got to this note, which is because it's at the block. Now, it's not on this page. Like, people would most likely just have the reference note here, the literature note here, the fleeting note here, but that's stuck in the page. This is like the shipping container, right? It's saying, well, this is how I've always learned how to do it. You put it on the page. What I'm saying is, no, keep it off of the page. Have it on the block. And the only time that I bring up this block again is the location of the permanent note and in the daily notes page. So if I go to December 8th, this is all I have. Just to clean this up a little bit. But that's all I have. And so that way I know exactly where everything is. And if I open this up, it's all the information right there. And by the way, these are all my relevant notes. So all of these, this is how I'm connecting this in my permanent notes. So if I shift click this in the permanent notes, you see all these inline references. These are connected because you see this structure right here? These are all what? Next to this permanent note. They're all siblings. They're all brother and sister. And that's the importance of how you nest things. Because they're brother and sister, it's going to show up like this in my inline references. And then you'll notice if I open this up, then I have 3 other siblings underneath this parent node. And that's for a reason as well. Because that way with one click, I can see all the information that I need. I need to have my reference, I need to have my literature notes, and I need to have my fleeting notes. If I need to open it up, guess what? I have all the different levels of abstraction that I need in there. But the point, yeah.
Oh, sorry, but Bo, there's a couple of key words you've said in the last 5 minutes. One was archive, or the old way of looking at it, and the next was the block in sort of an action-oriented words. Obviously, we're not going to go into it tonight, but I suspect that this will be the slow reveal that you'll be getting to, is that, like, this is all about action-oriented. Like, this is not an archiving thing. Like, this is all about using this system, kind of meeting me where I'm going. Like, when I don't know, I'm not using the right words, but that's I'm on the right track there, right? It's action oriented. You're using action words here.
The problem has always been that everyone was trying to take what Luhmann did and was trying to bring this into the computer. But they're missing the fact that when you do that, you're inherently bringing analog flaws and limitations into the digital realm. And so it's by looking at things with a different viewpoint is when it changes how things look. It's basically like the idea of structure notes was an attempt at that. Like what Christian and Sasha were trying to do with structure notes were basically the index. They were going to create an index, right? And the reason that they created structure notes was because they saw the limitations of copy pasting that analog into the digital realm. And so this is why Sasha and Christian were like, well, it needs structure notes because you're going to get lost in your Zettelkasten after you get to 100, 150 permanent notes. And Daniel Luedecke was like, no, if you do a proper Zettelkasten the original way, you don't need structure notes. And they had a falling out. And what I'm saying, I've been this third voice that's saying, no, you guys are both looking at it wrong. Now the technology that Rome offers, because it happens at the block level, because of what Rome offers, you can take away the structure notes, you can take away the traditional Zettelkasten, and you can actually apply the concepts at the block level. You don't need UIDs because it happens at the block level. You don't need index notes, you don't need structure notes, you just need to be able to know what the permanent note is now. And it's, I can't get to that point without explaining the first 2 levels over here. But these bottom levels that I'm talking about right now with the index notes and the reference notes and the relevant notes, that's the easiest part. The hardest part is getting you to write these fleeting notes, getting you to write and abstract out the literature notes. Once you can do that, then adding this relevant note, and all I'm doing is holding Alt or Option and dragging it over. That's how I create a relevant note. That's how I create a Zettelkasten. But the hard part is actually getting to that point where I have abstracted out all I can with the fleeting notes, abstracted all I can with the literature notes, and then crystallize this thought into a permanent note. That's the hardest part. It's the habit of writing. And then I'm telling you right now, I hold Option Alt and I drag it over. That's it. And then I forget about it until I need to stumble upon it again. And we're all gonna, and you're all gonna get there. I promise you. Like, listen, I'm putting everything I've got into this, and I'm doing my best to weave it all together, keep it as practical and simple as possible, but just understand that that's what I'm after. That's what I'm after. That's what I want. And I want you all to be like, God, that was fucking easy. Because it is. But I have to teach you how to, yeah.
But we're all taking a vote over in the chat room while you're talking. There's some pre-orders going on for your book.
Listen, you have to understand that I didn't even want to do any of this. I wanted to write stories because I was getting bullshit roles being sent over to me. And I was like, well, I'm just going to write my own shit. And then it was like idea generating machine, Zettelkasten, Rome, and then all these things started coming together. And so for me, it's like my heart is in the craft of acting. That's all I care about. All of this is just to go, dude, I found something. It works. And here, I'm not a marketer. I don't care about marketing. There's no mailing list. There's none of that bullshit. I just feel
Write
like
your own damn books.
I hate that shit. I think it's not cool to like click on a thing and go, oh, here's 4 of the secrets, but the 5th secret you have to pay $19.99. It's like, I hate that. No, it's like, dude, I happened to stumble upon it. I figured out how to do it in Rome. I spent a lot of time figuring out how to do it in Zettelkasten. I got coached by Sonke and I put it all together. I'm having fun. I get to be a service, and if I'm not having fun, I'm not being a service, then I don't want to do it. If it's not cool, I don't want to do it. Right now it's cool, and it's just, wait till week 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, and then wait till like you have 20 permanent notes and you're like, God, I can see myself. That's what I want.
I'd like to see where you are after we get to the end, Bo. I feel like maybe at the end you'll like have your own epiphanies about what your direction is supposed to be moving forward.
I feel like so the analogy, so every time I have a weekly meeting with my team, right? And it's like every week we're like, well, what the fuck does Rome have to do with any of this acting stuff, right? And it's like, you know what it is? It's like there's a body of water that I can't cross, right? And I just can't. Being an Asian American actor, trying to break out in Hollywood as an independent indie darling leading man, it's like there's a body of water. Rome and Zettelkasten is a ferry that's ferrying me across this body of water. I'm still in the vehicle. The vehicle is acting, right? But I need to be able to cross this body of water, and Rome is this ferry that's taking me over. Zettelkasten and Rome is this ferry that's carrying me over to the other side. And I just look at it like everything in my life is sort of opened up to this. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, listen, this is probably the hardest, most difficult time of my life. And this has been my saving grace to be able to help others, to be able to come up with these 42 daily lessons. It's like literally my back is up against the wall right now. And I'm just like, on the outside, my life is crazy shit. But on the inside, I feel so fulfilled. And it's just, where is this going to lead? I don't know. I think that's insight. I think that's the point of Zettelkasten. I think that's what I'm excited about. It's like, I feel like we're writing it into being. I don't know what the next thing is. I just know that right now, this is the most important thing. And right now, that's all I care about. Boom. Daily lesson, day 10. Daily lesson, day 11. Daily lesson, I don't even want to think that far ahead. I'm just thinking about the next day ahead, the next day ahead.
I think that your actor training is sets you up for success for this. Like, even if you think about, I mean, there's so many elements. I'm like, oh man, I can totally tell he's been coached. I can totally, I hear all of your training in it, and it's really amazing to see how you've blended like who you are and what you've done. Like, even I was just thinking about scripts, like how much you've studied scripts, because in a way, a character's script, or even just like their one piece is like a block.
The scene.
It has to link to everything else, and it has to have history to it. And there's a lot that weighs in, especially a movie, that you have to portray so much on just a small little expression, like how you say something, what you do. So you're like taking that and putting it all into it. So when they say what does this have to do with Rome? I'm like, well, I mean, it's art, and what Bo does is art. I mean, it's just, it all works together. So I can hear your training in it for sure, and how you coach us and walk us through it it's definitely pretty awesome. It's very unique. It's something no one else would be able to replicate. So
thank you.
Yeah, it's awesome. Thank you.
You guys are getting me through a rough patch in my life, I'll tell you that. And it's just, I wasn't expecting anyone to do any of the exercises. I wasn't expecting anyone to show up to the reading rooms, you know what I mean? So it's like, thank you, seriously, because it's been tough, and I'm not scared to admit it. Like, it's been crazy tough, and it's just, I think what's getting me by is like, shit, I gotta get another daily lesson up. Shit, I gotta get another daily lesson up. I gotta think about what the next week is gonna look like. How am I gonna organize that? Yeah. So that was just a little glimpse of what's to come. Just understand that I have to pack all of that in, but that's the easy part. The hard part is these like fleeting notes, literature notes, and actually doing that work and abstracting that out and doing the exercises, because that makes week 3 and 4 easy. And I do have to finish daily lesson day 10. I still have to do the guided writing exercise. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Everyone. Thank you, everyone. No, I'm serious. Like, I love you guys. I really do, and it's like, you have been so helpful to my personal well-being that, it's an honor.
Cool.
I'll post this video up online. You can watch it, rewatch it back, and so that way it's available for other people who aren't able to make it as well. And
how do we get access to the Otter transcript? Is that something you have to grant?
Yeah, you know what? I saw that the other day. I'll open it up. If you go, do you stream on?
Click on it, no?
Well, Bo, if you go to the top right-hand corner and then get the share link, or maybe you can't do it until you're done.
I think I have to, what's it called too? I have to open it up because it's not I have to open it up who I can share it with. Hold on. What's it doing?
Yeah, there've been prior not just you, but other people, they'll be like, oh, we're recording this on Otter. And I say request access, and it never is granted. So it's like people don't take that next step. I don't know what the next step is, because I've never
look,
had access.
I got it.
I think he has to grant access.
I recorded
Chris,
Ali and David's seminar, and then I had all kinds of people ask me for it, and they all accessed it. I just put a share link in the Twitter request, and everyone got it.
I just accepted, Chris, your pending approval, but I just put the link up there as well. I'll post it again. That link ought to just, if you have, now it should, I think it was a privacy setting on my end. So now you should have automatic. The only reason that I don't put the whole Otter transcript into the Rome database is because it slows it down.
Oh yeah,
it's so many
huge.
blocks.
It's huge.
It's so many blocks. So
will that get improved, do you think? Like even for me, when I turn Rome on, it just takes so long to load.
So right now the process is they're moving over to Datomic, the new database, but it's like Bardia talks about it all the time. It's like they're working on it, they're doing their very best, but it's like, it's a startup, we're at the nascent stage of all this. but it's, yeah. And it's,
So Bo, did you know how you,
yeah.
did you
Sorry?
know how you got a bunch for signups? I was in that like that live session with David Perel and Ali Abdul, and on the side, I don't know how we just got, a bunch of us got chatting, and next thing you know, it was all about Rome research. I totally hijacked the chat thread. I probably shouldn't put this online if David's watching this. They're probably like, who's this Samantha Postman lady? And I was just like, you guys, hey, you all got to be on Rome research, because they're all a bunch of people who want to be writers and stuff. I'm like, you guys got to check this out. And they're like, what is it? What is it? I'm like, DM me. And my inbox went freaking crazy on Twitter. I'm like, put my Twitter handle in there. And it was like, bing, 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 bing. It's like, what's Rome? What's this book club you're talking about? And I'm like, talked about. I was linking all this.
Honestly, but it's true though. This is like Google in like 96. You know what I mean? It's like we're at the, but I almost look at it like it's like Coca-Cola. You know what I mean? They were the first ones to do it. Like Pepsi came up after them, but it was like, why is Coca-Cola so recognized? It's because they were the first ones to get it.
Yeah.
You know, first mover advantage. But
okay, I was just laughing because I totally hijacked their chat thread, and they were probably reading it later, and they're like, "What does this have to do with productivity?"
Everything. Okay, everyone, I love you all. I will see you next week. If you have any questions, shoot me a DM. Thank you so much, and it's always a pleasure. It's an honor.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Bye.